everyone on this episode of Mismatched. I have Marsha Druker, who's going to be with us today. Now, she's all about creating community, providing people with opportunities to learn and connect with others. And really that flows through everything that she does. She does 1,000,001 things, but I'm only going to tell you a few of them. She is, of course, a community builder. She brought Fuckup Nights Toronto to Toronto because it is across the world. She's a director. She also has a podcast, Create Community, and it explores the human side of community and what that means. She's a mom of a young 2-year-old, and she's sitting here with us today. Marsha, it's so good to have you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Okay, so in this episode, we have a lot of swearing that's going to go down. I just want to cross that off and let everybody know there will be a lot of profanity due to the nature of the name of what you do. But tell me about, so that's how I came across who you were, is a friend of mine had referred to me a Fuckup Nights Toronto, and they were like, I feel like you'd really be interested in it, Nicole. It's something up your alley, and it's like so many people have gone up on stage and had gone on to do TED Talks or have done TED Talks and then come and speak, and all that to say is they were very much of, this is in your wheelhouse, you should check it out. So then I looked into it on Instagram, and then we got in touch, and you had suggested, it'd be really helpful to go see a night before we even do this. And after seeing it, holy, but for people who don't know, I'll shut up now. Marsha, what is Fuckup Nights Toronto?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you actually got to attend and experience it. We do have a funny, edgy name. So Fuckup Nights Toronto, it's a community and speaker series with the goal of changing the conversation around failure. So, when you look on social media, on LinkedIn, everybody's company looks like, it's the next unicorn, it's growing. Everybody's career trajectory is just a perfect straight line, and everybody's just killing it. You look on Instagram, everybody's relationship is picture perfect, their house is spotless, and, people just share the highlight reel of what's going on in their professional and personal lives. At Fuckup Nights, we want to flip that on its head. We really believe that the most successful people, the most successful companies are actually failing the most because they're putting themselves out there, they're taking risks. And, with that comes failure and comes pivots, and definitely mental health is a big part of the conversation as well. So Fuckup Nights really exists to create a really safe space for people to share these stories, to share, the flip side of their story, the things that didn't go according to plan, the failures that they faced in their professional and personal lives, and the lessons that they learned from it. Yeah, so it's a networking event. We have really amazing speakers that come out to share their stories, and just a really supportive community of entrepreneurs and young professionals that come out to listen and to network.
You absolutely could feel that. I'm telling you, as someone who had never gone before, you do such a wonderful job at making everybody feel welcome, because people really do come from all walks of life. I met an entrepreneur, I met a writer, a director. There are people from all over in different industries that are kind of able to come together and share a commonality of, failure.
Yeah.
Which honestly is really daunting and scary and sad and has all these connotations. So how are you trying to redefine what failure means?
Yeah. So, over the years, I've been running this for over 8 years now in Toronto.
Wow.
I've heard hundreds of failure stories, and they're all so different. Some are really devastating, some are more humorous and light. But the commonality that every story has is that there's something that you can learn from failure. So now I define failure as learning. I define it as feedback. And I just really think that, the only way that you fail is if you let it stop you from trying.
Do you think that your definition of failure has changed from listening to all of these speakers over the years?
Absolutely. Yeah, my definition has changed, and my relationship with failure has changed a lot. I'm a pretty type A person. I'm very anxious, and I've always been kind of terrified of failure, to be honest. I was always really a perfectionist. Mm-hmm. Now I feel like I embrace it a lot more. And something that I've really learned from all these talks is just because you failed at something, it doesn't mean that you as a person are a failure. it's sometimes
there's a separation.
There's a separation because our identity can get so tied to what we do professionally or how something is going in our personal lives, whether it's a relationship or, something else. So just really being able to separate those two things and just, recognize that you're human and failure is just a part of that.
And it sounds so simple, and yet it's so hard for so many people to adopt. Similar to yourself, I grew up, I'd say, like, definitely with perfectionist qualities and a bit of OCD and, wanting to be great at everything. So I think I took failure so hard. Like, I remember, like, even like getting a bad grade on a test, I would come home crying, and not because my parents would yell at me. In fact, it would be the opposite, where my parents would be like, it's fine, don't worry about it, you'll do better next time. Like, do you need any more support or whatever? But I would come home and cry and just be devastated at, feeling like I'm not good enough.
Yeah, same here. I can totally relate to that.
For you, when you hear these stories of, say, like, and lessons really is what they are, how does that kind of change, would you say, like, the audience and their perspective based on talking to people who have gone to the events?
Yeah, honestly, one of my favorite parts of running this event and this community is just kind of looking out at the audience that's there and just seeing their reactions to the stories. Sometimes you see people crying at some of the stories, laughing, of course, some of them are really funny, and just everything in between. And then the stories that come out of it at the end, like, people literally message me the next day on LinkedIn or Instagram, just like really sharing that it completely changed their perspective. They maybe came out because they were dealing with something really hard in their lives, and just seeing somebody else go through something similar or, a different type of situation and kind of come out of it on the other side is just really inspiring and really encouraging to people that come out. Also, just the kinds of relationships that come out of these nights. People have met co-founders. People have found really cool job opportunities through it. A lot of friendships have formed. There's a few relationships that have actually started at Fuckup Nights. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
It's amazing.
But yeah, I did the exact same thing. Like, as soon as, you had such great speakers the night that I went, Michael Hyatt and Katie Zephyrini. And like, I actually had gone up to Michael after the chat, and I was like, hey, like, I want you on my podcast. And he was like, yeah, sure. So he's coming out in a few weeks.
That's amazing.
I was like, I want to talk about relationship with business, because he has great insight into that.
He's really open about, just dating throughout his entrepreneurial journey and how hard it's been and how many rejections and failures he's had on that side as well. So, oh my gosh, that's going to be a good episode.
It's going to be a good one. See, she knows. But so how do you go about finding these, like, such interesting, diverse group of people?
Yeah, it's so funny. When I first started 8 years ago, the first event was kind of a struggle because nobody's ever done something like this in Toronto. Nobody was sharing failures in such a public sort of forum. So getting speakers for the first one was tough. Like, I really had to, kind of dig through my network and get referrals and just, like, really explain the concept and why we're doing it to people. After the first event, just something really clicked. I feel like the city really needed this. So a lot of our speakers are actually inbound. Like, they're people that come out to the events, they really resonate with it, and then they actually self-submit and apply. So we got hundreds of applications. We got a lot of great speakers through there. Some is, of course, still cold outreach, like, just finding people who we think would be really good speakers and reaching out and seeing if they would be open to it. And a lot of it is referrals through other past speakers or, just people who know somebody who would be really good for it.
That's really cool. So in bringing this to Toronto, like, where did you hear about this first? Because it is all over.
Yeah.
But yeah, where did you first learn about this?
So I saw it in a few places. It was actually in a few places in Canada already. Montreal started just, I think, a few months before Toronto. Ottawa had a chapter, and it originated in Mexico City.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it's all over the world, like in multiple languages. So I just came across it on social media, and I just thought it was so cool and so different and just really refreshing. And I was shocked that Toronto didn't have it yet, because there's just so many amazing people and so many interesting businesses, and no one was really sharing failure in this kind of way. So yeah, I figured we needed it.
Of course, Toronto is like the last one to adopt
Yeah.
something like this. The city of like, trying to be one, pretend like we're one way. And then
Yeah,
actually
exactly. We're perfect.
Yeah,
no
we're
failures
perfect.
here.
Everything is great. And yet there's all this underlying shit that people are going through to try and like get through life. I wouldn't say, because I know we talked about this earlier, Marsha, about like failures and failure can be, I think, so many things. And I've kind of mentioned this loosely on the podcast before. It depends, like professionally, it could mean one thing, and like in a relationship, it could also mean something. It could mean disappointment. It could mean a reroute. It could mean like redirection, like you're saying, or a lesson that simply just needed to be learned.
Yeah.
Is there like anything that you would want to share with somebody that has been like a redirection or maybe pivot or something, whether it would be in your career, professional career, or personal life?
Yeah, I think, a failure or a lesson that's kind of reoccurring for me is trying to do too much on my own. Just, saying yes to everything, taking on every cool opportunity, and then finding myself really burnt out. So I've really learned over the years to, get a team around me, especially for Fuckup Nights. And then, just really delegate where I can and really trust those around me and find people who are better than me at doing certain things, like social media, for example, or, just the logistics with some of the event stuff. But that's something that's come up a lot for me over the years. And it's still, I feel like the lesson just keeps on surfacing.
That's okay. That's life, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we're kindred spirits because I also struggle with doing that too.
Yeah.
I'm like, I trust no one. I need to do everything myself, and I want to say yes to everything. And then you have like the brink of burnout, and then that's not good for anybody around you or even yourself, because then you're not able to like show up as your best self.
You're not at your best. Yeah.
Right. But I would say like when I think of like my personal failure, it would be when I lost my job. I think this was, I'm so bad with years and time. This is probably like 4 years ago. I worked in TV for a number of years, and I was let go, and it was very unexpected because I didn't do anything. Like nothing happened. It was just like budget cuts and after COVID and all these changes that happened, and I was like the first to be cut. And I like didn't know what to do with myself. It was like,
it's so tough.
It was so tough. I remember it was in the meeting was with Zoom with my boss, which was like a regular thing that we did. And then all of a sudden HR comes on, and I was like, oh no. And my first reaction was, did I say something stupid on air? Because I really had no idea. Like that. So many things were promised that were coming, and all this excitement. And so my first thought was like, oh God, am I getting canceled? Like, did I say something offensive? I'm trying to like recap quickly. My heart's sinking. I was in the middle of moving as well. At the time I had sold my condo, was moving in with my boyfriend at the time. Now an ex, that's another story. But so yeah, and then I remember they told me, they're like, we're gonna have to like let you go, and I was just like in shock, and I don't think I like felt anything until the laptop closed. My face was like burning, and then all of a sudden I just started crying. And then, well, number one, it was like, I'm a failure. I'm clearly not good enough, or they would have kept me on. And number two, I was like, I'm feeling like my partner right now because he's going to think that I'm trying to mooch off of him, and I like just lost my job and I don't have a plan B. Like, what am I going to do? And so anyway, all of it like worked itself out. And in fact, like that's when I started freelancing. So I mean, they let me know I was being let go, but then I had to go on air for 2 months knowing that and not telling anybody. Like I couldn't tell any coworkers or anybody. And so that was part of it, the hard factor of it too, because all of the sadness and angst was like kept internally. So that was tough. And then I would say, and then after all of it transpired, we moved in together. I was like, don't worry, I'm going to pay the rent. We're going to be okay. I promise I'll like land on my feet. And I started freelancing, and that's kind of how I built my freelance career. And at one point I was like, I got one job and I was like, okay, like this was cool. Then it was another thing. And I was like, oh, maybe I don't have to like look for one thing. But if you asked me that years ago, I sincerely would say, oh, I would never be open to that. Like I would never do that. And now here's 4 years later, I'm like you know, in a whole other position in my business.
That's
and
amazing.
I consider myself like an entrepreneur in a backwards way. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. Like the failure was so hard to accept, but at the same time, I would have never decided to do that, and I wouldn't be where I am without it.
That's amazing. I love that. Yeah, I feel like failure is just, it's absolutely just a redirection at times. And, you know, if you're resourceful and, you know, you really kind of think about what you can do next and you don't stop, there's always success on the other side. And oh my gosh, I can totally relate. I worked in tech for a number of years.
Did you?
And yeah, you know, like there was kind of like a boom around COVID, and then a lot of layoffs happened in the years following. And I definitely got caught up in that as well. I went through 2 layoffs in a row. Both of them actually while I was pregnant with my first child.
That's even harder.
Layoffs are brutal. Like your identity is so tied sometimes to what you're doing, and it's just so hard to figure out what you can do next. But same for me, like I can really relate. It ended up being a really great redirection for me as well.
How did you kind of like pick yourself back up, would you say?
I mean, you know, I took it in. Like, I definitely did a lot of crying and a lot of soul searching at the beginning.
That makes me feel better. I don't think I left bed for a week. I was like, I get 1 week to mourn this and feel super sorry for myself.
Exactly.
Have ice cream, rage, listen to all this angry music.
Yeah.
And then I got to like pick myself back up and put myself together.
Exactly. I think it helped just the fact that it was like they were massive company-wide layoffs that had nothing to do with performance.
Yeah.
And there was just multiple other people on my team and company-wide that were let go. So just having kind of almost like a support group of others that went through it, and we all helped each other as we were kind of looking for our next steps. So there was that. Also just having Fuckup Nights as well, just as a creative outlet and just something that I'm so passionate about. I was able to keep doing that and just kind of put even more energy towards it. And then, yeah, just like not letting that define me, just really like hustling to figure out my next step and, you know, just thinking more deeply about what I actually want to be doing.
And so why was like community, do you think, like always super important to you, Marsha? Because this is something that I feel like filters through every job that you have and everything that you do. That's been like a constant of like community.
Yeah.
Why is that important to you?
I think it's a few things. So I grew up as an only child. So I feel like just from really early on, any community that I had was kind of my own choosing. Like I had to make really good friendships and, you know, really
there's extra effort
there's
put into
There's
things.
extra effort for sure. And I didn't have any cousins either growing up.
Wow.
Tiny family. So yeah, so I really, you know, was very selective with the kinds of friends that I made and always kind of found myself as the person who would organize things and just bring people together. So I've always really loved that. And then with Fuck Up Nights, honestly, I just fell into it. Like I've never really, you know, organized events or done anything on this scale, but I just love the concept and I just really thought that it would be amazing in Toronto. So I just kind of went for it. And then I fell in love with it. Like I totally fell in love with doing community initiatives and kind of found myself doing that more in my career, and then the podcast that I started as well.
I love that. Tell me about your podcast.
Yeah, so my podcast is called Create Community. I actually started it, funny enough, right before COVID started. So when I first kicked it off,
the irony of
the irony. So it was supposed to be focused on community builders in Toronto. I was recording in a physical studio, like really professional with an agency. And then a few weeks into it, the lockdown started.
Oh my gosh.
And I kind of realized that community was more important than ever when we went fully remote.
Totally.
So yeah, I expanded it to be more focused on just really like anybody in the world. And I was really fortunate to get some amazing guests, like people, you know, during the lockdowns, people didn't have a lot of other things going on. So I actually got the founder of Burning Man on the podcast.
That is
at
so
one point.
cool.
Yeah.
My best friend and I were literally just talking about how we wanted to go. And have you been ever?
I haven't been. I've been to kind of like some of like the side events and things locally here, but it's my dream to go at some point.
How cool. Maybe we make a trip out there and we go.
Yeah. But yeah, the whole premise behind the podcast, like I felt like people were kind of misdefining what community means. I feel like it kind of almost became a buzzword around around that time, people were calling their newsletter community. They were calling, their social media account the community, when really what they've built is maybe an incredible audience. But a community is really something where people can, talk with each other and kind of have like multiple touch points. So I just wanted to kind of profile people who are building incredible communities, share their stories, and just share their tips and their learnings from building their own communities.
That's really cool. Honestly, that was like the point of why I wanted to create something like this as well. I think with podcasts, it's great because you have this like open dialogue. And that's what I love about this platform is that like even when you post things online, and I don't know if you find this the same way, I don't expect everybody to have the same opinions or thoughts. No. In fact, the point is to welcome that.
Exactly.
Like I think we're lacking the space and opportunities for people to have different opinions and that be an okay thing. You don't need to agree on everything, but it should be, like you said off the top of this, a safe space that's, welcoming and non-judgmental to say what you think and how you feel.
Exactly.
In building like your community, what are things that you look for that's really important in your like immediate circle of community?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I find that I actually have a really good sort of like gut feeling and filter about people. I feel like I look for people who are, just being true to themselves. They're not, pretending to be somebody that they're not. Mm-hmm. I look for people who are kind. Definitely, like I feel like intelligence is important. Like I like to have conversations that are more about, like ideas and things that are interesting and just things that can kind of elevate all of us versus, trying to, gossip and things like that. And then just people that are community minded themselves, who are open to, bringing others together.
What are some of the relationships that you've been able to build from Fuckup Nights Toronto, and maybe some of the guests that you've really enjoyed and now like are friends with or have learned, key takeaways from?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Like over the years, I feel like I've actually become really close with a lot of the past speakers. And there's almost like a micro community of past speakers themselves who kind of keep coming out to events and get together on their own. Some of them ended up working together on certain projects.
That's so cool.
And opportunities. So yeah, that's been amazing. I feel like I just learned so much from all of the speakers. They're so inspiring, whether they're entrepreneurs or executives or creatives. Like there's just something that I've taken from each one, and just to call them my friends and kind of like my circle that I can reach out to. It's really amazing, and I kind of pinch myself sometimes just at what this community has become.
Well, it's because you've been able to foster it. It starts from that, and then it kind of grows. And like you said, big on that. My parents always said this to me when I was young, and I didn't quite understand it, I think, until I got older. But like, you really are who you surround yourself with. So it's the same thing. If you surround yourself with like-minded people who are uplifting and, encouraging and have big ideas, it's nice to be around that kind of thing. And I think as I get older and you have less and less time, you become more selective about where you spend that time.
Exactly.
Now you are a mother. You're married,
I
right?
am,
Okay.
yes.
Something that you told me over the phone that I thought was so interesting is for Fuckup Nights Toronto, you do like a Valentine's Day edition, which is really fun. And I love the thought of that and what that entails. So on the note of like relationships, how did you meet your husband and what does he think of all of this?
So I met my husband online. We met on Hinge, and he is really like not the kind of person that I expected to end up with.
Really?
Yeah, but it's in the best possible way. Like I feel like he's so different from me. He's a teacher, former pro soccer player.
Wow.
I'm like the least athletic person on the planet. He's very talkative and outgoing. I'm definitely more reserved. So we just complement each other so well. So we met online. We really clicked. Our first date was literally like 12 hours long. We went for coffee and then just kept going to just different patios and just chatting. And we had so much in common and so much to talk about.
That's so sweet. How long have you been together for?
Just over 5 years now.
5 years.
Yeah.
Nice. So Marsha, what does your husband then think about you doing all of this, but especially with Fuckup Nights Toronto.
Yeah, it's so funny. So when we met, it was 2020, and Fuck Up Nights was on hold. Like, I was doing some virtual events for it, but he only heard me kind of describing what it was like. He couldn't really imagine it. He's not from this kind of world at all. Like, he wouldn't go to events like this. So when we finally brought it back in person, when things opened up, he actually volunteered at the event. And he loved it. He had so much fun. It was so different for him as a teacher, being in this kind of environment that's so like entrepreneurial. And actually out of it, I think he got inspired and he actually tried a startup of his own, which failed, but but that was kind of a fun little part of him attending.
So what was it like navigating that when it was a failure? Was he like, oh well, at least I tried to handle it better?
Yeah, no, he didn't. So it was kind of like a summer and pat leave experiment for him.
Nice.
He basically tried to create kind of like an AI startup for teachers to make marking and lesson planning. And a lot of those kind of like tedious things that teachers do a lot easier. He worked with a co-founder. They created a really great tool, but just with other free tools available like ChatGPT, they didn't get the user base to actually take it somewhere.
Got in the way of that. Yeah, but that's really cool. Good for him.
Yeah.
And you have a son.
Yeah, we have a 2-year-old.
So how has that been? And like, there's so many layers to like, I feel like having a child or children. In terms of balancing work and what that feels like, because I think a lot of parents can also relate to feeling like they're failing their kids when they're not always there for their kids. But it's like a balancing act between work and career, but also then being there for your family. How do you navigate that?
It's definitely a balancing act, like you said. I ended up taking a much longer mat leave than I expected because of those layoffs that I mentioned.
So there you go. That happened for a reason.
So I was planning to take maybe like 6 months or something because I worked for a US company. And I ended up taking almost 14 months. I think, which was amazing. I was kind of doing entrepreneurial things throughout the mat leave, which I think kind of kept me sane and just kept me, grounded and connected with the community. So I was still running Fuck Up Nights the whole time and just doing a few other things. We have an amazing support system. That's the only way I think that
takes a village. That's what they say.
Village. So it's either if you're lucky enough, like we are, to have amazing family around. Or if you don't have family in the area, I think if you're trying to have an ambitious career and do a multitude of things, you need to have a paid village at that point as well, or some kind of combination.
I love that so much. A paid village.
A paid village. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. But yeah, it's true. And then they become your village.
Exactly. Yeah. But we're so lucky that grandparents are super involved.
Yeah.
My husband has a really flexible schedule as well, being a teacher. And it's really a balancing act. Some days are a lot tougher than others. A lot of sleepless nights with a baby and a toddler. But it's been the most rewarding and just happiest time of my life as well.
Oh, that's so sweet. What do you want to teach, failure to your kids?
Yeah, really good question. I think of my earliest memory of failure as a kid. It's probably when I was 5 or 6 years old. I was in a school concert and I had a poem that I had to kind of recite on stage.
Oh no.
And halfway through the poem I forgot my lines.
Oh.
And I started crying on stage.
Oh no, Marsha, that's terrible. You poor thing.
And then my mom ended up coming up on stage and kind of taking me behind the scenes, and I'll always remember this. She said, I was like, the concert is over. I ruined the whole thing for everybody. Everybody should go home. And she's like, no, what do you mean? You just go try again. And she reminded me the next couple of words. And she encouraged me to go back on stage and just try again, kind of restart from where I left off. And I did it. And I felt so good. And, I got so much applause and everybody was so happy. So I think, I'd want my kid to have the same kind of approach to it. So, just because you fail, that's something. It doesn't mean that you are a failure. It just means, you just have to try again and you can't give up.
Mm-hmm. Not giving up. So there's like a catch-22 to that, because some people, and I don't want to be like a pessimist because this is all positive and nice conversation, but some people like
sometimes you have to give up. So you have to know when.
Marsha,
Yeah.
I felt so bad saying like I can't even look
Yeah.
at you saying this because you just have all this hope and inspiration in your eyes, and I'm gonna be an asshole right now and say the thing of like, but sometimes you have to give up.
Sometimes you have to know when to call it quits. Yeah.
So like, how do you thank you, how do you kind of like figure out what that moment is of really like letting go and being like, hey, like this is not working out, I've got to do something else?
I remember one of our speakers said something along the lines of like, first the universe whispers, then it talks, and then it shouts. So listen to, outside cues and also internal cues, like how you're feeling in your gut. Sometimes it's really obvious your business or your project or whatever it is you're doing is failing. Like maybe the financials are just not there, or the team is not working. You've tried a few things and it's not working, and you have to kind of shut it down and move on. Other times, if it is something that could be fixed, then you can like learn from the mistake and correct it. You can keep going. And sometimes it's like it's internal, like maybe you're dealing with really bad burnout, or your health is suffering, or your mental health. So just like really being aware of those external and internal cues, and just like really figuring out when it's time to walk away from something and start fresh.
That's really good advice, because I think many people would agree that they kind of struggle with knowing when to give up, so to speak, and like pivot.
I just saw that episode of Friends. I was flipping through.
Oh my gosh, and I was laughing so hard. God bless. Friends is like the greatest show, and I was cackling by myself too watching that. And like, it doesn't get old for me at all. And I know, during COVID, that's what everyone was saying, is like pivot. That was the word, but I don't associate with that. I associate it with Friends very much so.
Yeah.
Let's go back to your professional career if we can. What is a moment where you have had to like pivot or think quickly or make an adjustment, or maybe kind of let something go and try something new?
Yeah, there's been a few of those for me. My career has not been a straight line at all. So I started out in like really traditional corporate. So I went to business school, I went to Schulich, specialized in marketing, and then I kind of went the CPG route, working for a few different brands. My role ended up turning into kind of more of a project management role, which I've learned really quickly it was not my strong suit. So I moved from there into a more of like a communications and PR kind of role, which was a much better fit. I was at this company for about 3 years. I loved it. But then I started just seeing what was happening in tech. This was around 2015, I think, 2016. And I just really like felt the pull towards there. So, and it was a really hard pivot to make. Like in school, in the business school that I went to at the time, the traditional corporate path was like very much the only option that was kind of presented. So to make the pivot to go from, a really large corporation to kind of going back almost in my career to taking an internship and being employee number 5 at a tiny tech company. That was a huge pivot that I made, but it completely changed the trajectory of my career and my life. So that was one. I've also just recently moved from tech into the nonprofit world, working on food innovation.
Another big jump.
That was a big one. I feel like, I really listened to my gut throughout my career, and I really believe in opportunity and abundance and just having an open mind and just kind of letting the opportunities present themselves and really listening to the kinds of things that you actually like to work on and what you're strong at, and, seeing if there's a good fit. And, it might not be the industry that you expected or the team that you expected, but sometimes you find like an absolute gem.
What was it like being a woman in tech?
Really good question. I feel like really fortunate, like the companies that I was a part of, there was a really good balance, which can't be said for a lot of tech companies. So for me, I never really, felt that. I didn't feel that discrimination. I felt like I was really, there for just like what I could actually bring to the table, and my opinions were really heard. I know people that have had very different experiences. But I had really great experiences overall, and I absolutely love the pace of it and just the pace of innovation and how quickly things happen. So I really enjoyed that.
That's really cool. Have you seen, Marsha, the movie Swipe yet?
No, not yet.
It's based on the founder of Bumble and her story. She's like female entrepreneur. I think she was like the youngest billionaire.
Yeah.
At like under the age of 30 anyway. Or sorry, under the age of 35. But you would love it. I feel like it's very up your alley. I don't want to give it. I mean, you can Google the story, but it's very interesting.
I followed her story. I had no idea there was a movie or a show.
Yeah, it just came out during TIFF, and it was so inspirational to see how, someone can hear a no and then be redirected into a career in life that she never would have had if it hadn't have been, for what she went through over, because she started at Tinder and then went over to Bumble. But yeah, I think it's just like fascinating how you can't prep for these sorts of things or like learn these sorts of things. But what you can do is share stories and experiences, and like on Fuckup Nights Toronto, like have an environment and support group where that is your education. Marsha, what kind of advice would you give to someone who is maybe listening and thinking, I can't get better at failure? Like, how do I get better at accepting failure or redefining what it means?
Yeah, I would encourage them to share their failure their fuck-ups with those around them.
Because there's a lot of shame associated with when you fail, especially if it's public.
Exactly. And it makes it so much worse when you kind of, hold it so internally to yourself. So I'd really encourage them to share with somebody. Like, it could be a parent, it could be a really close friend, it could be anonymously somewhere, just like getting it off their chest and sharing. And they're going to be shocked that, how many people could relate who've gone through something similar, who've come out on the other side of their failure. I'd say that for sure. Trying to redefine how they see the failure, just really recognizing that it's a part of being human. It means that you took a risk, that you went for something. And just because you failed, that doesn't mean that you as a person are a failure. So just like really trying to make that shift and really taking care of their mental health. And then just, having a community of people around them. Like, don't isolate yourself. Don't say no to, things that you're being invited to people reaching out, even if you're going through a really hard time. Sometimes, just speaking with somebody or attending an event or just getting out there it could be the thing that pulls you out of it.
I mean, as much as maybe going to something like that might feel uncomfortable, sometimes that's the best thing, because it forces you to kind of branch out and connect with people maybe in a way that you would never normally go out of your way to do.
And come to Fuckup Nights too. I encourage people to actually come on their own.
A lot of people, and I made new friends.
Exactly, because I feel like if you come with like a friend or a group of friends, you're gonna kind of stick together. Yeah. If you come on your own, it really opens up your world, and you're gonna, you're hopefully gonna be a lot more open to meeting even just one person at an event could just really change the trajectory of your week or sometimes your life.
And like I said earlier, I really can't explain like the warmth and support of the group of people. Like when you go alone, which I did, like I really didn't feel alone. I sat down on a bench. There's like icebreakers where you get people chatting and asking questions, and then it just opens up the whole forum. And people are just like-minded and kind in this space. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it, and I want to come back for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back. And if you want to speak at some point.
Oh God, I don't know about that. What would you? What's coming up for Fuckup Nights Toronto? If people want to, look up different events that you have coming up, buy tickets, or look you up, or anything like that.
Yeah, so we're Fuckup Nights TO across all the socials. Our next event is coming up on October 23rd. The one after that is November 26th.
You usually do once a month,
Once
right?
a month, yeah. Once a month. We're going to be celebrating our 9-year anniversary in March this year.
Wow.
That's always a fun event. And then the February event that you alluded to, our Valentine's edition, that's like my absolute favorite.
I want to come anniversary. To that so badly.
Yeah, so for that one, we spend all year kind of curating the speakers. That's where Sarah spoke initially. And we find speakers who had a relationship fuck up collide with a professional fuck up.
Ooh.
And they share that story. So maybe, you know, their business was failing, but at the same time they got dumped, or they were getting sued and going through a custody battle at the same time. You know, just really wild stories of relationships and business failures, because at the end of the day, like, our personal lives are not separate from our professional lives. And that event just really shines a light on that.
That's so cool. I love everything that you're about and everything that you do. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank
and I'll
you.
see you at the next event.
It was so fun. Thank you so much for having me.